Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to October. I am so glad that you're here. If you are new to this space, my name is Tamil. I am an artist, I am an advisor, and I am a leadership coach. And I channel messages for the collective to help us keep sacred time and to help us heal, to help us grow and expand into our soul. Our soul's true nature and our purpose for this incarnation. So I am coming to you on this eclipse day in Libra with some bibliomancy. Again, I'm really enjoying this, and this is the book that spoke to me for our Libra eclipse messages. I'm not sure exactly how much I'm going to read. I just know that I'm going to read from the book, from the chapter titled Structures of Equality. The book is Family Matters Feminist Concepts in African Philosophy of Culture. And the book is authored by Nkiru Uwechia Nzegwu. Nkiru Uwechia Nzegwu. So it's an Igbo author, and I'll get better on Igbo names. I should be good at it by now, but I'm not. So, all right. We are going to start here. Then I'm going to give some brief guidance on what we can expect from the eclipse in Libra. And then we are going to go a little bit deeper with the Hoodoo Tarot in honor of Hoodoo Heritage Month. And in the extended messages, we'll get some more specific guidance, either sign by sign or for the elements. So let's do it. On page 222. Because the political structure defined an interdependent relationship, they functioned in a complex weave to create a tight social fabric. Omu and Ikporo Onitsha had jurisdiction over matters of trade, and the men, adult, young, unmarried men, had the tasks of keeping the trade routes open. In riverine towns such as Abo, the Omu played a vital part in military campaigns. Her canoe, with its ritual mat, believed to make fighters invisible, led the men to battle. So although men were in charge of military campaigns, women were in charge of the rituals required to mobilize the deities and divinities, as well as to fortify the moral resolve of fighters so that a favorable outcome could be achieved. Both sexes had agricultural responsibilities. Men planted and produced yams, the labor-intensive staple crops that sustained the community for half the year, and women produced vegetables, corn, and cocoa yams, the staple food that sustained the family during the second half of the year when the yams ran out. The adjudication of disputes occurred in both the men's and women's spheres, and sometimes jointly. Lastly, both played key roles in spiritual matters, propitiating the nation's deities, purifying homes, and ensuring that the community maintained spiritual balance. Because roles, responsibilities, and obligations fell equally under female and male spheres of influence, the administration works in a complementary manner. Women's sphere of activities complemented that of men and vice versa. The notion of complementarity invoked here in no way parallels the notion advocated by conservative American women in the monosex system. In the latter system, gender domination and inferiorization of women are the norm, and so complementarity emphasizes gender inequalities that have arisen as a part of patriarchal division of labor. This is an entirely different framework from the dual sex system. Thus, to state that the Omu Ikporo Onitsha complemented the Obi and Iregu, the rank and file of adult men. And so here, Omu and Ikporo Onitsha are roles. And so we can go deeper potentially at another time, but I'll just keep reading now. I'll start the sentence over. Thus, to state the Omu and Ikporo Onitsha complemented the Obi and Iregu, the rank and file of adult men, is not to imply that Ikporo Onitsha provided the feminine or caring emotional side of the divide. Additionally, sexual and reproductive capacities did not translate into a source of systemic disadvantage as they did in the monosex system. Rather, they were loci of strength and advantage. Political interaction between the sexes was mediated by a conscious awareness of Nkiru and Ikporo Onitsha's respective social roles and responsibility. Care was valued by both women and men as the hallmark of good family or lineage and conjugal relations. It was also a part of their social roles. Women did not value care simply because they were women. They did so because they were mothers, sisters, daughters, wives, friends, good trading partners, and so on. Men, too, valued care for similar reasons. The social ideology of the dual-sex system did not require women's entire existence to revolve around the care of children and others. Men were also required to be caring. Older children cared for younger children. Parents, grandparents, and older lineage members cared for younger ones. Industriousness, assertiveness, and independence were valued attributes for all adult members of society, given the duties they performed as a part of their administrative roles. No one sex had a monopoly on these and other psychological attributes. Both men and women could be assertive, cowardly, fearless, bold, patient, and shrewd. Both women and men needed political acumen, foresight, and assertiveness to survive in the socio-political condition of the times and to perform their tasks. Oratorical skills and intellectual acumen defined leadership and were possessed by leaders in either group. Within the dual-sex system, the roles, responsibilities, and obligations of adult women did not pattern the feminine traits of the monosex system. Behavioral traits were not gendered. Like community fathers, community mothers, or Ikporo Onitsha displayed traits and attitudes that appeared on both sides of the divide in the monosex system. They applied the relevant trait to the job at hand. They were shrewd, logical, and rational in matters of trade. They had a good head for calculation and aptly performed the tasks efficiently. They were eloquent speakers in the political arena and possessed moral integrity. Because roles and responsibilities were primarily social, anyone could perform the tasks should the need arise. Ikporo Onitsha, that is, married or divorced daughters, widows, and some wives, could plant yams, and community fathers, that is, married or divorced sons and widowers, could grow vegetables and cocoa yams. Community fathers could trade, and Ikporo Onitsha could participate in keeping the trade routes open. The social nature of familial roles and the institution of marriage made it possible for a female to be either a wife or a husband. As was explained in Chapter 1, some daughters did not marry, some married and later divorced, and some became widows. These three sets of daughters could enter into idibe, relationships with male lovers, or they could marry wives who bore children for them. Furthermore, Anama Diume indicated, in the absence of any male within the lineage or conjugal unit, the most senior daughter would end her marriage and assume the headship of the male side of the line, and even as she remained the head of the female line. These kinds of headships occurred when a family sought to thwart the rotation of seniority rights out of their subfamily to a junior one, which would have extinguished their rights. However, contrary to Amadume's claims, this has nothing to do with a daughter becoming male, as that suggests that membership and valuation by a family is dependent on being male. The basis for the national, and the author is referencing another book that talks about gender through the Igbo social constructs of roles and family. However, the basis for the national division of duties along lines of sex and administrative convenience. The basis for the national division of duties along lines of sex is administrative convenience and was not gender-based. For this reason, the division did not preclude members of the opposite sex from participating in them. The fact that Ikporo Onitsha was in charge of trade did not mean that men were barred from trading in the market or that they could not take on that duty. The goal of the division was to allocate administrative spheres of control to both sexes so they could function as partners in the management of community at large. Under the dual symmetrical arrangement, duties were conceptualized in ways that gave both sexes comparable measures of autonomy and independence. Because rights accrue to groups rather than to individuals, the political effects of this complementary principle is that both women and men had political significance and were valued, and that their worth was incorporated into the conception of ideals and attributes. None dominated the other. Acting collaboratively on national matters, the heads of the two modal spheres and their councils formulated the nation's political stance on issues. This clearly defined interdependent structure ensured that each sex group was viewed as a vital cog in the socio-political wheel. The consultative process of political rule also ensured that both the viewpoints of Ikporo Onitsha and Nkiru were well represented in decisions that affected the whole community. No decision that affected the lives of women, their administrative area of control, or their status was made without the knowledge and agreement of the Women's Council. Decision-making proceeded up and down and between the chains in a consultative manner until a satisfactory decision was reached. Suggestions, ideas, and advice were informally elicited from the other side and from different sectors of the community. Heated debates and conflicts might arise, but these were dealt with in a non-adversarial manner until a fair and judicious resolution that maintained group cohesion was obtained. It did not mean that consensus was arrived at all the time. It proved elusive on occasions, and sometimes it was not necessary. On the occasions when consensus proved elusive, those who felt deeply that their perspectives were sidelined could overturn the decisions, indicating the non-autocratic nature of policies. Sometimes there were serious consequences to these actions. These resulted in major socio-political disruptions that split the community into opposing camps. Nevertheless, after a period of time, peace was eventually restored. We only have 2 more paragraphs and then I'll close. At the national level, the interests of the entire community converged. Because the governing councils were a central unifying organization, they promoted pan-community values. They also built cohesion among Ikporo Onitsha and Nkiru and promoted a community-centered consciousness. The strength of the dual sex system was that no one sex had a monopoly of power, authority, and privilege. Both sexes had blocks of power and authority, which ensured that women's presence and roles in community governance were not taken for granted. Both men and women were able to protect their collective rights and could respect what each brought to community administration and development. Denial of the other's rights and refusal to respect them led to disruptive social challenges and social withdrawals. Ikporo Onitsha exercised power in the same way that Nkiru did. Power and authority were built into social and political roles, allowing occupants of those positions to wield influence. Insofar as women and men occupy positions of authority, these attributes were perceived as human social attributes. The point here is that the societal conception of power captured the fact that Ikporo Onitsha exercised power and authority. The 2 parallel administrative structures and their trimodal space of consensus, building, and socio-political action also radiated downward through the 9 village wards to the family level. As Hsuing described about the Confucian model of equality, Hsiung is how you spell that last name, Xiong. The Onitsha model preserved the integrity and autonomy of the family, which in turn acted as the bulwark against the state. But unlike the Confucian model, the Onitsha model did not frame the identity as one in which daughters were subordinate and their interests were best represented by men. Even today, the head of the female line is the overall Isha Ada, the ward's head daughter, and on the male line is the overall Diakpa or Di Okpala, the ward's head son. The pattern repeated downward at the lineage and family level with the Ishiada and the Diakpa at the head of each line. Although the interests of the lineage daughters converge with those of the lineage sons, the parallel line of authority still exists. Both maintain their autonomy, but they also come together for joint family meetings. However, the position of Inyemedi, or lineage wives is a separate matter. They are not part of the two parallel lines that terminate at the family level because as wives, they are really not part of the marital family. Even though the interests of the two family groups converge in certain areas, Inyemedi do not participate in Umuada meetings, since there are consanguineal matters of interest to Umuada that Inyemedi do not share. Equally, there are conjugal matters of importance to Inyemedi that are of no interest to Umuada. So what character of equality emerges from this socio-political system? So obviously, because we are talking about we're in election time, we're thinking about how to govern ourselves. Libra also talks about balance. It talks about equity. It does talk about the polarity. It does talk about the duality of sometimes the principle of gender and how we construct it in society, equity, law, fairness, rights, contracts. I can see why, like, this is what stuck out. I have not read this book in its entirety. I started reading it and this is where I left off, page 152, and it has a bunch of notes, but I'm going to commit myself to reading it again. It's also Nigerian Independence Day, so that may be why it's coming up. But I think obviously we need new systems of government. We need new systems of community, ways to engage each other respectfully, ways to honor each other in our humanity outside of the projections of the societal roles that gender creates that dehumanizes individuals because we're projecting onto them all of the things that come with what society, particularly Western and European models of gender, have laid and projected onto us as templates that are completely expired, invalid, inorganic, and do not reflect our true nature as individuated beings of the divine. So, with that being said, I would love to hear your thoughts on the reading. Let's get into October energy for the collective. I'm actually not going to use this deck until the extended. I'm going to use her other deck, which is an oracle deck for October energy and eclipse energy. Did I bring it out? Oh, I already brought it out. See, I was prepared. Close this. The Sibyl's Oraculum, Oracle of the Black Doves of Africa. And I also have the Talisman Oracle that I used last time, which I really love. I did not do a recording or a channeling for the Pisces lunar eclipse. One is my natal moon, but also I was traveling and I was at the Ma'afa in New York, East New York, for school. It was fantastic. Shout out to all of the beautiful people that I met and who are also like now family. I love you guys. Shouts to you. Let's get these cards. We're gonna do 2 from each deck. Rage is at the bottom. I'll say that the definition of rage in this deck is my favorite definition of rage, and it is the emotion of basically not being loved properly or adequately or sufficiently. That's where it's born from, and I'll get the exact quote later. So the first two cards from the Sibyl's Oraculum is Limitation and Doubt. And the second cards from the Talisman Oracle are Financial Security and Concealment. The bottom of this deck is Castaway Negativity. I think that part of concealment is a shifting the energy as we go into fall, into winter, as this time of consecration, which I already talked about. Saturn retrograde was going to be anyway through November, but winter, as we go into fall and the winter season, is generally, it's not so much that you're hiding, but you are taking time to go within, but also to keep things under lock and key, tightening up things like passwords, potentially, agreements and negotiations around privacy, reconsidering what you share with who, and working potentially on a project that you may feel is outside of your capacity, or that stretches you, and acknowledging what your limitations, for instance, might be. Maybe it's skill, maybe it's experience, but allowing that to speak to any doubts that you may be having, because then you'll have clarity on where you need to grow, who potentially you can trust to work with, to fill in the gaps of what you may not be as skilled in. I do see us being supported and moving forward, even though we have limited understanding of what is unfolding. For us professionally and personally. I think we're also learning how not to be enraged by other people's limitations, because we do have our own, we acknowledge what our own limitations are, and we also are able to care for ourselves more deeply when we realize the insecurities that the other people's limitations, particularly in relationship, maybe even financially, or just limited ability to invest, right? So financial security is here, but this could be any type of emotional investment or commitment, and an unreadiness or unwillingness to make certain commitments that you may expect, or progress, projects, investment, like starting a new business together, collaborating, like whatever it is that you find out that there are some trepidation with somebody you thought that you were going to be able to go deeper with, whatever the context. Instead of you deciding not to proceed or not pursue what it is that you want to, you're actually just able to reflect upon what the insecurities or what the feelings or emotions, or even like passion or reawakening of desire, like what it activated in you, and still pursue it anyway, and working with what you have when you don't have the rose-colored glasses anymore of like what it actually takes to get what you want done, how much resources you actually need to get that thing done, and you become more open to who is going to be able to meet those needs across contexts, because you're more concerned with pursuing and pushing past your own limitations within your old sense of self, and you're emerging and entering into this new and expanded sense of self that gives you more courage, even though you are unsure of what it's going to look like. And so you become less attached to outcomes, you become less attached to other people, and you become more aligned and attached to what's best for you and for your highest timeline. And I think that that's the difference between this eclipse and other eclipses, it being in Libran energy. Yes, eclipses can be chaotic. Yes, they can be completely disruptive, but Libra is more about alignment and balance. So it's really just showing you the truth of where you are and what you need, And it can also be removing things that may be security blankets. We see financial security here. Things that you were hiding from yourself, repressing desires that you know, we talked about this in the last video. So desires that you may have been hiding from yourself because of fear. And in doing so, now that that veil is removed and you're able to hear more clearly your spirit, you're able to more clearly communicate with people in your circle because you have these new awarenesses about what you feel is holding you back and what you need from people, from the community at large. Then you're able to actually receive what it is that you need because you've gotten the inner work done to get clear on what those things are versus lying to yourself, whether you consciously knew you were doing it or not. And so now you're facing your front and you're able to get those needs met. Pull this charger over here so my camera does not die. Sorry, y'all. Bloopity bloop. Okay. Now I gotta do this now. Okay. Lighting change. All right. Let's read limitation. And doubt. Limitation is the prerequisite to infinity. The blooming tree symbolizes existence and all its lushness. The leash dog represents our ego's experience of limitation. The canine is comfortable until it encounters that which is unfamiliar to it. The only way to make it stop barking is to separate it from the source of agitation or otherwise distract it. Boundaries and limitation are probably very, very filthy words if you consider yourself to be cosmopolitan and open-minded. However, it is important to remember that without boundaries and limitations, we would not be able to live. If our kidneys decided to suddenly function like a liver, bees suddenly hated nectar, and trees just didn't feel like emitting oxygen anymore, we would be in trouble. We expect boundaries to be strictly maintained in the natural world around us, but sometimes we forget that we too must adhere to laws to ensure things run smoothly according to a greater plan. So what does self-governance look like? What are some limitations that you can impose on yourself? What has previously felt like a limitation that is truly a safety precaution and measure? Where have you felt restricted when really, you know, it's good for you, it's medicine, and you're just needing discipline? Let me fix this light. That was gonna bother me. Okay, thank you. So yeah, like, where can you put in place boundaries for yourself, routines for yourself that are going to actually enhance your ability to experience the pleasure, abundance, and the security that you're seeking? The reason why so many people grumble at the mere mention of limitation is because they usually associate it with boredom, restriction, and suppression. This is a very short-sighted point of view because there are situations where imposing boundaries and limitations will permit the attainment of the ultimate objective. In that regard, holding your desires in check would be an investment in what you want because you remain focused on the bottom line. Naturally, we are all free to change our visions and goals at any time, but if you sincerely desire a particular outcome, but put it aside to be free now, then be aware that that choice may come back to haunt you later. If a situation arises that you feel like you are not ready to handle, toss that idea right out of your mind. You are ready, or it would not be happening. That's what I said about the project. Like, whatever is coming up or the opportunity, like, you got it, you can handle it. You just may need to put some imposed limitations on it so that you can rise to the occasion, if that makes sense. If you search within the ultimate cause, you will discover that you manifested the situation, whether or not you were aware of it. Free will is exactly what it says it is. You are absolutely free to make choices, but it will never release you from the consequences of those choices. It simply does not work that way. And the faster you accept that, the better you will get at seriously judging the long-term value of certain decisions. Guilt, lack of confidence, and the shoulda, coulda, wouldas always prevent people from being relaxed, cheerful, and genuinely content with themselves and the people in their lives. Everyone is disciplined at something. Even choosing to remain ignorant in the age of information takes discipline. It's commitment to being a fool. Therefore, everyone is a disciple of something. It is up to you to decide what master you will serve, and thereby set how life will eventually limit you based on the nature of your allegiance. If you get this card in a reading, the oracle may be asking you, are you dodging responsibility? Are you rebelling unnecessarily against authority? Do you fail to see why limiting circumstances have occurred based on choices you have made in the past? Is your definition of freedom unrealistic or immature? Is it time to restructure your life according to what you know you want to achieve? Have things gotten out of control because you have been lax in setting boundaries, are too laid back, or have passed the buck too often? Are your priorities and goals in life supported or negated by the people with whom you consistently surround yourself? Could it be time to rearrange the social hierarchy according to your definition of success? Yes, I think that's why we had that reading. How might it benefit you to pull back? Are you clear about what you want and what you expect from others? So this is very broad and it covers a lot. So you can watch that back. You can slow down the speed. You can write the journal prompts. Pick whichever one